Hello, my fellow healers. In this video, we are getting PB with a group of people where 8 players do not have PB yet, and we have 4 experienced players who do have PB. And this group was able to progress the achievement in only 20 raid days, which is very fast for a team with so many players who don't have the achievement. We had a very amazing progression for some of the players who started with practically minimal knowledge of what's going on, and they were able to get to the point where they know the trial as like a back of their hands. We kill Snake here for a higher score, and we were able to get the achievement with a respectable 306,000 score, which is very good for your very first PB, I think. And composition of this group is very simple. All the supports running all the same setups throughout the trial. So we have main tank in Pearlescent Ward, Sax Cleel Champion, and Nazare, OT in Lucent Echoes, Powerful Assault and Spalder, Kite Healer, Warden and Spell Power Cure, Pillager Prophet and Symphony, Group Healer, Templar, Jorvold, Roaring Opportunist in Ozazan. We have 3 support DDs. One of them is Necromancer in Alkosh, one of them is DK in Zens, and one of them is Sork in MK on single target fights and Morakdong on AoE fights. I think simplicity of the setups is definitely a strong point here because having just one setup throughout the trial was definitely a breath of fresh air. After all my past course where I had to switch a lot, I feel like it was a good choice by raid leader to make setups extremely simple. Not only it makes it easier for the supports, but it also makes it easier for raid leader when they're looking for fields, because when you find the field and your setups are extremely convoluted, it takes a long time for them to create those setups, and then you never know how they will perform on those convoluted setups. So simplicity definitely was a good choice here. And in here for trash, I have a more damage-oriented setups, but I didn't really need it. I just made it to see what can I do. And I added Templar's Club Heal to make sure everybody stays alive. And then all of the rest skills were more like towards damage or building ultimate. On Oaxilzo, I replaced from common Templar setup, I replaced Purifying Light with Warding Contingency, and I also added Mender's Bond for more shields, so both of them are scribed for shielding. Um, and I used a lot of those shields when I didn't have any mechanics to do, because based on the log review, I noticed that a leading reason for death for DDs were those little meteors that being trapped on the ground, and those meteors one shot if you're not shielded, and you can be alive if you are shielded. So adding Warding Contingency and Mentor's Bond definitely increase survivability. Since we are not using barrier, that is a common approach for Oaxilza hard mode. All supports are either in Horn or Colossus here. So our basically scribing skills were playing the role of that preventive shield that helps to get the Oaxilzo no death more consistently. As you probably know, in Rockgrove, hardest hard mode to get would be Basay, and hardest no death to get would be Oaxilzo, because Oaxilzo has so much RNG in the fight. So it definitely is important that you reduce the risks in this fight and find some way to give your DDs a little bit more survivability and get consistent no deaths. Another interesting thing about Oaxilzo is that it has a lot of RNG and a lot of queued mechanics. So depending on how fast your push goes, his behavior changes pretty drastically, because he would queue and prioritize certain mechanics over the others. And so if your group is inconsistent in terms of damage, as a support, it will be more difficult for you to do the kiting. Particularly for kite healer, it is more difficult because now you have to do split-second decisions of when to cleanse and when to not cleanse and wait for the charge. Because in some cases, he would queue the poisons and the charge one after another, and he prioritizes poisons over the charge. And in some cases, it would be so fast that you wouldn't have time to cleanse to get back into position for the charge. So that's kind of a challenge that we were facing with my co-healer. Eventually, our timings of the fight lined up in a way where he wouldn't do that anymore, and so we didn't have to like make those decisions. But originally, when we had that issue, we agreed with her that she will cleanse and I get the first charge and cleanse afterwards, and then approach it that way. But yeah, if you are facing that issue, think about what you could do in that scenario. Luckily for us, the group damage is such that in execute, when we get those final sets of poison, our kite healer doesn't have to stay poisoned for too long because Oxy also dies very quickly afterwards. So that is not an issue. So we don't have to kind of find a way to juggle the poisons in the end. It's just basically she gets the poison midway through that poison, he already dies, and the pool doesn't even come up for cleansing yet. But in while we were progressing, it was definitely a challenge because as group was getting better, um, the fights were a little bit longer. So we had to figure out how we're juggling those poisons. So it would be my co-healer Barry gets it first, and kites it. I cleanse, then um, she cleanses, I get it, NOT get it, and then we kite it, and then if it lasts any longer, usually that would be a reset because it means something went awfully wrong in the progress. But in some cases, DDs would also get it, and we would finish the boss to just go and see the rest of the trial. On this trash, I eventually figured out that it's 36-bit. Might as well just switch back to Oxyl setup because it has all the necessary components for me to add additional survivability to the group. It's warding contingency and uh, warding bond, Mentor's bond with the shield. My warding contingency is scribed for minor protection, shield, and gladiator tenacity, which is extra mitigation plus shield. And my Mentor's bond is scribed. That particular date, I described it to ward, and minor heroism. And that was kind of a lucky thing that I did because that day also my co-healer after the rage was like, oh wait, I didn't use my ulti potions this entire time. But because we had that heroism Mender bond, she was getting the necessary heroism to build her barriers in between the trash bags. So it's kind of a lucky coincidence there. Originally, I had it scribed for minor uh, minor mending, no, minor vitality. But then I figured I have Zen, why the heck do I need minor vitality on Mender's bond? So I switched it to minor heroism. And this is something to be prepared for, that your trifecta run, actual run, will not be as perfect as you expect it to be. And sometimes your prep runs are much cleaner and maybe even faster, have better uptimes. But on actual run through, things will happen and you should be able to sort of adjust to them or figure out how to like survive through them. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be your trifecta. So if you get it, you deserve it type situation. On Base, my setup is pretty similar to what I have on Oxyl, so except I have Purifying Light instead of Warding Contingency because Purifying Light is a very strong HUD that heals around the target that you apply it to. So I keep it on Base so that both MT and OT get HUDs from it and it helps them to stay alive, especially during Abominations phase where they receive a lot of incoming damage. Especially for OT, it's important to have HUDs on them. And what we do here is we keep our HUDs somewhere around the curse area by between the last curse and where Base is, so that when our OT is stacking Abomination slams, they get very strong healing while they are in the slam because they kind of go back into each of the slams to double stack them. And in some cases, they are even able to cancel it because if slams line up exactly one over the other, they will just go away. It's kind of difficult and not super consistent, but it is something that happens. And if it happens, it's like a nice to have thing. So we're progressing in pretty fast phase, and these are able to cleave abominations very well to where we don't have like 2, 3 at the same time, which is nice. And the fight area that's covered with the slums is very compact. As you can see over here, it's already been 3 abominations, and we didn't even pass the corner in here. So that's a very good thing that our OT is so experienced that they can save us so much movement by just stacking the slams very well. In here, our pace is such that Base prioritized summoning abominations over casting curses and over casting some other. She also casts like portal over the curse, and curse is basically least priority for her. And because of that, she queues them and never casts them like up until like second half of the fight where we almost an execute. But there is always risk that she will. And so because of that, we kind of a lot of the time separated from the stack because we're just waiting for those courses and they're not happening and not happening and happening. That's kind of annoying. And that complicates placement of my ritual and usage of vigor. But there, when we had bad cone, I was able to anticipate, oh, okay, so group will go this direction. So I pre-place my ritual there and it lasts for a long time. So group will have access to it. Here, as you can see, one of the DDs separated from the stack a little bit due to some sort of mechanics that were in group. And because of it, we just used a barrier, even though we don't really use barrier on this fight ever, but I had it slotted on my front bar, so raid leader called, if you have barrier, use it just in case, because it's 36 feet. We don't want to throw that because of one minor mistake by one person. So we just barriered and were able to survive the curses pretty well there. And people used their eyes and didn't stand in it and didn't blow one another up, which is pretty nice. And because of the fast pace of the fight, we finished it very quickly immediately after. This trash is pretty simple. I'm still using my Oxylto setup that is also very suitable for trash because wording contingency helps with some random stuff that can happen in trash. And here it's important to basically, if meteor drops, kill the meteor. If that large away around one person who is furthest away from the stack, you have to take it out because if it goes off, it puts burning on people. So you don't want to set people on fire with it. So take it out. This part of the trash going forward is very dynamic because there's one roaming behemoth, so it's very important for the tanks to communicate with one another who will go grab it and where they will bring it so the rest of the trash can be stacked accordingly. And so here, if you would ever throw, that would be because something got untaunted, and it's very important for the tanks to be organized here. In our case, it was never a problem because our tanks are pretty well work well, like well-oiled machine, and the group synergy that they gain during the walk so and base in this trash is very strong. So we never had those type of issues where something smacks somebody for the most part. Sometimes, obviously, there would be a case where like the taunt goes on some random little mob or whatever, or the server is lagging. But for the most part, it was very smooth and no issues in terms of untaunted things going and smacking people around. We are approaching Ash Titan. Usually, if you would throw 36 bit, that would be during Ash Titan rains, and it's very important to sort of do damage so that you don't get the second set of rains, but also avoid them and shield through them to the best of your ability. And my warding contingency and warding bond here comes in handy as well. It's also here important as a support to stay at like safe distance to where you are not letting your meteors on the DD so that they have space to kite. And in there you could see that we sort of kited out with off tank towards back to have some space available, and then sort of kind of merged into hive mind where we kited our meteors exactly in the same pattern, which is kind of like a coincidence, I guess. But yeah, that kept us alive and that kept the DDs alive as well. Here we have a 30 seconds breather so we can collect our thoughts together, and especially for first time Planesbreakers, this is a nerve-wracking experience, but we do want them to perform because Zalvaka is a DPS race, and if you slow on damage, the level of risk increases tremendously because you could get an extra shell phase where you could avoid it, and shell phases are the biggest risk here. And because of that, we just take a split second, don't run face forward, and basically let people to prepare mentally. In here, we plan her positioning in a way where if she ports twice, she will end at the exit, so it's easier for us to exit the room. And that is, you would have to, for your team, plan it how many times she ports on the first floor. That's how you should plan it. She ports completely opposite to where she was, so you can control her that way. And in here, I use rapids as well, so that because my rapids is amplified by Jorvolt, so it lasts longer. And I use it in areas where we need to kite, or we need to reposition, or we need to go on a next floor. So, for example, between parts, if I use rapids, people get to the next tile faster and can pre-buff their huts faster, and that's faster. Here I do a mistake and I use barrier instead of horn because I sort of queued a bar swap that I didn't pay attention as the horn was called. So I pressed my alt instinctively and then, oh shit, I'm on the wrong bar. So I used my alt on the wrong bar. But otherwise, it was planned to be a horn. There's no reason to use barrier in here altogether. We do use one barrier in execute because we had enough of basically alts and we had enough of force, and we just called for extra barrier just in case. Going upstairs, we're maintaining our huts on the ground because they sort of somehow go through the floors. So you definitely want to replace the altar, cast your orb because people can take synergy, and cast your ritual. Walking into the room, also important to add rapids so that people get to her faster and don't have to can run out of the stupid meteors faster as she casts them as you're walking in. And it's important for everybody to run together in organized fashion so that meteors that she puts on the ground do not spread and make it untraversable area through the bridge. In here, the usual use rapids and then call out what shell is available. Before the shell is called, I keep my huts in the center for people to stay healed as they are waiting for the definitive call out. And then as soon as call is made, I move my huts to the shell that is our target shell. Here we try to make sure that we blow up the orb because blow up the slime because that slime hits for some incredible amount of damage. I think it's 300k or something. It takes a good chunk of her health. So definitely bank on slime because slime will allow you to do this floor faster and it could let you to avoid one of the shell splits. So you will push her before she splits for the third time, for example. So definitely important to collect the blob and explode it. Here we achieve that explosion, and so it takes out everything random trash mobs around it, and it takes out good chunk of her health. And here we have second blob growing. We could have exploded that second blob as well, but I think it goes off already when she pushed into the next floor. But still, it's kind of a good job on part of this on collecting the blobs and making sure they explode. And it's important to collect them away from the stack and not stand to them because as they grow, they can encroach on you and actually like munch on you. So you would die because they increase in size. See, the next blob is going off, but then Zalvaka is also running. I think maybe that blob helped us to push her now that I'm rewatching this VOD. And final phase. In final phase, it's important not to stack your meteors on the main tank. We split our responsibilities. I stay behind the main tank and my co-healer stays behind the group so that we kite some unnecessary meteors away from the primary stack. And that allows me to provide orbs and extra healing for the main tank because he takes tremendous amount of incoming damage as he holds her, so he needs all the help that he can get from the other supports, and he needs awareness in positioning from other DDs. If I need to place my ritual in a convenient spot, I would just go towards Salvaka, place it in the intermissions when she doesn't do the meteor mechanic or at the end of the meteor mechanic. Here, because we have like force available, that's the barrier that I use. I think it was a very smart play on the raid lead part to call dynamically for the barriers that some of the supports had, slot it on their bars and see what the force was, and be able to utilize our ultimates to their full potential. And we never had those barriers called in our practice runs, so this is just extra survivability boost that he used during the actual 36-bit run so that DDs are prepared and ready to deal with mechanics, but we give them an extra padding on 36-bit run. If we were to use those barriers during the other runs, right, these would rely on it and it wouldn't sort of train them to avoid mechanics when they don't have the shield. So I think that's a very smart strategy for the team that is getting their first time Planesbreaker. It's very important to maintain your composure in execute and be able to play around all sorts of unexpected things. For example, here, our kite healer got caught inside of the fire, so she makes a decision to roll towards the mini, not away from the mini, because that was a shorter path for her. And now she kind of is stuck there, so she needs to deal with her meteors somehow, which she was able to do. And on my side, I have a watcher that spawned and sort of overlapped with the meteor. Luckily, I was able to see the edge of the AoE and roll dodge it, which was also kind of a nerve wracking. But overall, everybody was able to adjust to all sorts of kind of RNG that could happen but never happened before and play around it. It's not only that, but some of our DDs were lagging pretty badly throughout the run. So if you could watch their POV, you would see that they were skipping quite a bit. Luckily, it didn't line up with any kind of dangerous mechanics for them. So we were able to get the achievement. So yeah, all sorts of things happen to you on your trifecta run. And those things, you cannot anticipate them, but if you play well, you will be able to play around them, but be prepared that it's never going to be a perfect, easy, smooth going run. It's going to be actually the most nerve wracking experience that you would get throughout the progression. And here we finish the fight, and we get a very respectable 306 score, which everybody is surprised because we were expecting to get 305k. And with even lagging and everything, we overachieved our goals, which is great. Congratulations to everybody on the team who got their first PB and everybody on the team who got their first 300k score, which was me including. And I wish you best of luck in your Tamriel trial adventures, and I see you in the next video.